And welcome everyone to our March 2025 Agile Boston monthly meetup. I'm Joe DeAngelis, uh, and I am really excited to uh, introduce Matt Jacobs and Alyssa Layden from Scrum Inc. Um, Matt is on the product side, and Alyssa is on the practitioner side, I would say. And together they're going to really talk to us about not just the theory behind you know, or the idea about using AI to better your agility and better your Scrum, but they're going to actually show us real examples, real practical examples of how they've used it successfully. So you're going to be able to walk away today with some real information that you can apply this afternoon in your jobs or tomorrow in your jobs. Um, and I think the other part of the title that I added, which came from our podcast, by the way, was the next generation Scrum Master. Because I do believe the next generation Scrum Master is going to have to be one that leverages AI to improve the effectiveness of their teams and their organizations. And that's how Scrum Masters can really add value to their organizations. So with that, again, I'm very happy to introduce Alyssa Layden and Matt Jacobs from Scrum Inc. And please give them a warm welcome. And the floor is yours, guys.
We're here to talk about harnessing AI for Agile success. Before we get into the topic, we should probably introduce ourselves and talk a little bit about why we have any relative credentials to actually be talking about this topic. So my name is Matt Jacobs. I'm the chief product owner of our consulting group. So we really focus on bringing kind of enterprise agility to life to organizations and working through holistic change. Before actually joining Scrum Inc., I actually worked in an AI lab and it rolled out Agile as the way the lab operated to bring together multidisciplinary teams to be able to solve client problems with AI. So this kind of topic and the launching of generative AI has actually started to combine those worlds together. I find this is a really interesting space to be in because I think AI not only can help organizations transform, it's actually the driving force behind a lot of organizational transformations at the moment. Melissa, you want to quickly introduce yourself?
I do, yes. So, hello everyone. My name is Alyssa Layden. I am the marketing director and, as Joe mentioned earlier, a AI practitioner. I like to say that Matt and I have contradictory yet complementary skill sets. So, I am very much a practitioner. I think myself, along with the rest of the world, 2, 3 years ago, kind of woke up one day and realized the potential for AI to replace or augment or supplement my own job duties. So I've really investigated further in the last, couple of years, learned as much as I possibly could. And as Joe mentioned as well, I've brought it in a practical application mindset. I have been testing, experimenting in our own teams at Scrum Inc. in my own work. So that hopefully brings a bit of the grounding to some of the higher level theory that Matt will cover. But I added a quote here that I hope could speak to some of the folks on the call here. AI isn't scary; it's an opportunity, and I would go as far as to say it's an opportunity that we must embrace right now. So excited to dive in and have this conversation.
Yeah, one of the co-CEOs of Netflix was recently quoted saying, AI isn't going to take your job, but someone leveraging AI may or will. So it's
Yes.
it's a wonderful opportunity if we decide to kind of embrace and explore about how that's going to be able to augment what we do to make it even better to deliver more outcomes. And as Agilists at the end of the day, the entire point of agility is to deliver outcome. So not only do they both start with A, they both are trying to get to the end thing, which is better outcomes. So as we jump into this, I think there's two topics that get really intermixed that are really important that we actually separate. Artificial intelligence can really fuel agility. and make agility better by removing some of the barriers to entry, removing some of the physical work associated with it. And I think as Agilists, there's been a lot of conversations about why artificial intelligence is important to drive better results through agility. But the inverse is also true. Like my first foray both into AI but into agility was almost the exact opposite. Was why is agility important for artificial intelligence? And how to actually, for doing artificial intelligence development, why is it really important that we have agile practices to be able to support that? So at the end of the day, I think these things now are combining themselves into a flywheel where artificial intelligence is getting better due to agility, and agility is getting better with artificial intelligence. And I think that OODA loop and this rapid iteration, working in cross-functional teams, it matters to both of these completely. So as we go through this conversation, we're going to divide this conversation into the two pieces and talk about kind of how both facts are true simultaneously. And also, if people have questions, feel free to use the chat or just join in. This very much can be much more of a conversation than a lecture if you guys want to make this much more multi-dimensional. So we're going to first touch on, all right, Agile and AI development and why it's super important. So first, one of the things in kind of working in our lab is you need to look at AI development very differently than other kind of software development because a lot of times it's not going to work. There's lots of reasons it's not going to work. It may be because the technology isn't quite there yet. It could be because there's actually another solution that's not AI driven that would actually be a better solution. Or third, all right, AI could do it, but we don't have the underlying data to do it today. So the answer is not yet. So in a lot of AI development shops, people are actually going through this transition of I have my development pipeline, but in my AI land, I want it to be a funnel. I want to be getting lots of ideas in, testing and iterating, and deciding, all right, this isn't going to work, this is enough, or we want to keep developing. So let's get really purposeful about how we develop that technology to continue to invest in where it's helping versus where it's not. The second is, all right, where are we going to do AI work? We're seeing in tons of organizations we're working with, it's like AI push. At the end of the day, AI is a tool. It's like if they mailed a hammer to every single person at Pixar Studios and said, everybody, we're hammering from now on, and just started smacking hammers around the office all day. It would be highly unproductive. Like we can actually use some of the agile structures to identify where we should get focused. Like, all right, we're having this inefficiency, this impediment's being raised by this team that actually the contracting process is taking so long. Now I've got a problem. I've got a real clear why and the impact to the organization. Why don't we focus the AI development then on solving the problems that people are facing instead of actually looking for problems to go solve using AI? Let's actually use some of these agile structures to identify where we should focus. The same is true on the inverse, on the PO cycle. Like if you had people with AI knowledge looking at kind of the product backlogs going, oh, this is a great solution. There's a great AI opportunity here to use different tooling to get this done. That transparency of work can start to drive people to focus on where on the product side should we be using AI. The next is multidisciplinary by default. When we were forming the AI lab, so this was within a larger consultancy, we all of a sudden were a collection of 100 individuals. We had data scientists, we had software engineers, we had data engineers, we had consultants, we had business people, we had finance people. Like, how are we going to work together? We needed a mental model to bring us together, kind of out of the box, and get us to work as multidisciplinary teams to be able to bring these things to life rapidly and quickly. A lot of the consultants understood the domain space. The data scientists, good at developing models, really bad at developing effective, efficient systems. So we needed the data engineers to ensure that it had the right connecting to the platform, et cetera. So actually, kind of agile ways of working became a default to bringing the skill sets together. And then for a lot of the others, people who came from traditional software or other places, you can't have a plan. Like as you get into feature engineering, you need a vision. You need clear checkpoints. Are we continuing to make progress? But if you try to do a work plan line by line about what everyone's going to do, I'm going to deliver work package one and then two and then 2.1, 2.2. Like you can't develop AI that way. You're doing a lot of actually experimentation exploration. So we need a solution that allows the solution itself to be emergent over time. So that's where kind of the agile ways of working are almost absolutely required. And then we're gonna have fast feedback loops. Like we could run into danger very quickly where the model is doing some dangerous things. And I'll bring in two real world examples in. One, we were working on a fraud detection situation for a very specific type of fraud where they had nothing in place today. We were able to develop actually quite quickly a model that was identifying 1% of the fraud cases. The data scientists, the area under the curve score, like they weren't really impressed with their own solution and wanted to keep tinkering and iterating. And the consultants on the ground were like, guys, this is enough. This is worth 150 million a year in savings to the organization if you can identify 1% of these fraud cases. Like from an academic standpoint, model's not that interesting. From a business standpoint, it was super interesting. Like, why don't we release it right now? It had almost no false positives and was identifying not all the fraud, but 1%. That moved the needle enough. If we weren't using agile processes and sprint reviews, the data science team who was doing the engineering would have totally missed that they had something that was of significant value to the customer within that context, even though academically it wasn't a super interesting model. The inverse is also true. We were doing things with a large organization that hired thousands of engineers, and they were using AI to screen resumes. What became really clear is that the bot, due to the data, was just super sexist. It was just rejecting female resumes like over and over again because they trained it off data of who was currently successful engineers within their organization. Turns out they had a problem there. No shock. So they rolled it out. They quickly got sued anyways because the AI was really good at determining if the resume was male or female. It started looking at, all right, what sports did they play? Oh, they played football? Probably male. Let's let this through. So we actually had to blind it to sports. Then we had to keep blinding and blinding and blinding parts of the resume to remove it until it really actually became good at identifying writing styles between male or female when we loaded anything into it. So we had to give it up because the data just wasn't there. It was too biased, and any type of bias deletion framework we tried to run it through, we couldn't do it. So like you needed those fast. We needed to run stuff. We needed to continue testing. We needed to continue iterating to remove that bias and to be able to quickly identify where we've got solutions. So like if you're going to do AI development, I cannot imagine how you do without agile processes. And even if you're not using formal agile processes, if you look what anyone successfully is doing as an agilist, you would recognize it as agile, even if it hasn't been named.
All right. That's an interesting story, Matt. I've never heard that. How terrifying. But good, but good for those feedback loops. Okay. So Matt touched a bit on AI within Agile within AI development. There's too many A's. So I'm going to shift over to AI's influence on Agile and our Agile processes. So we're going to start at the highest level, looking at organizational agility, sponsored by AI. So when we have the ability to bring AI into multiple areas, correct, right? At the product level, within our enablement teams, within our communications, we're not just optimizing team workflows at the lowest level, but we're turning the entire enterprise into a flexible, adaptive living system that learns and delivers faster to the customer. So we're bringing in some of that language that we're all familiar with. So modern organizations, we're really recognizing them as complex adaptive systems, networks of self-organizing cross-functional teams. And the AI is the tool that really unlocks those real-time insights that help us to sense markers out in the teams within the market and respond quickly to those. We're able to iterate on the business model, not just on our individual product backlogs or team backlogs. And I want to highlight that this is really what we're seeing. You know, Matt can validate or argue here, but we're really seeing organizations coming to Scrum Inc. with this in mind. They're looking at how to make their organization or their operating model more flexible, more adaptable, more agile. Um, and there's a really great tie-in here. I hope folks on here have heard the term data is the new oil. It's been around for a little bit, but I recently had an aha moment that this data integration and this AI integration is really going to be the fuel for modern businesses. So we're seeing an emphasis on collecting data at all parts of the organization, internal and external, using that data to generate our AI-driven insights, making faster decisions, delivering faster, and then collecting more data from the end users and then using that to restart the loop. So, we have been as bold as to say, like, data AI integration is really going to be the marker for successful businesses in the next couple of years and how we're using our data to drive those insights.
Yeah, and you see a lot of organizations, and this can kind of just build off digital transformations. Like at the end of the day, if you want AI to make more decisions within the organization, I need to think about very holistically, how do I capture data? Where do I want to be capturing data? How do I make that interoperable and connect throughout the system? Because it doesn't matter if I have the right model if I don't have the right data. And this has gotten to the point too to fuel this data is the new oil standpoint. The government, for organizations that have no revenue, what their currency is when you look at their valuation is data about
Mm.
actually should we be taxing data collection? Because like all these services that we use quote unquote for free isn't free. What we're giving up is the data. And that's how their entire business model works and the value of that data and hoarding that data. So like it's actually an entire marketplace built around data collection.
Yeah. And it's interesting, right? I think on the other end, we also have a lot of organizations that collect a lot of data, but don't necessarily use it to change their behavior, right? So, speaking specifically within this marketing sphere that I exist in, there's a lot of areas where you can look at user feedback, time on page, all of these things that influence the success or help you determine the success of something that you're putting out into the market. As we mentioned earlier, I think that practitioners are really going to be measured successful if they're able to, one, collect that data, and then two, also use it with AI tools to change their behavior faster. And so I think, on one end, we have these larger organizations that need to be taxed or could potentially be taxed. On the other, we have either practitioners or teams or smaller businesses that, really need to start thinking about their data collection system. And this isn't just like user behavior. This is, going further and looking at types of data that can influence and add more
Well
context.
said.
I love the comment, the saying, if the service is free, then you are the product, unfortunately. Uh, all right. So zooming in a little bit more from the organizational level. So one of the reasons that this talk was so exciting is because we're really starting to introduce these AI lessons and sections within our own trainings and our own consulting. And we're really seeing this fall into two different silos or two different sides of the house, right? So we're seeing AI transform the products that we deliver and how we deliver the what, and then also the processes that we use to deliver them, aka the how. Hopefully this is familiar with you all. Over on the product side, really want to highlight here that this is influencing that product owner, product manager role, but also our developers, our team members on the ground. We're seeing changes to how we are identifying what exactly we need to build and why. AI enhanced or AI enabled product owners have more intelligence at their fingertips, and they also have reasoning models to help them generate prototypes or generate forecasts that are more intelligent than just assumptions. And then we're also seeing, right, hands on the ground, these dev cycles that are being accelerated with AI assisted coding. Even looking at, my area, content production, this is really accelerating and bringing true Dr. Sutherland's quote of delivering more value in faster timeframes, right? We now have team members who can their capacity essentially is doubled, tripled, et cetera, using these tools. Um, we're also seeing
I
the
was just going to add, Alyssa, for kind of live, I'm at a client site this week, and they
yeah.
just finished an analysis, and 70% of code is already being written by AI.
Mm.
There's some studies, some classic studies that high-performing coders are 18 times faster than the average. There's some data being floated around. Um, I'm not sure how validated it is, but AI-driven coders will be 100 to 150 times faster than individuals. And you can see that too, like, been to an organization, kind of like Live Hack, that they were able to bring a product from ideation to market and get to an MVP within like 4 to 5 hours, which included a data warehousing module and front end and all the application underneath required to do that. So you're seeing this ability to remove the non-thinking components out of the development and also getting AI to talk to each other. Like you could do live testing where one bot is writing code and one is testing the code to do some really interesting things and leveraging that AI knowledge to create a cross-functional team, which just includes multiple AI bots in it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's fascinating. It's happening overnight, right? Um, Over on the right-hand side, the process, how, we're seeing it change the how. Obviously, those real-time insights, like we mentioned before, we're collecting data from various sources. We're able to very quickly, in a matter of seconds in most cases, generate real-time insights that can change our behavior, change our sprint very fast. We're also seeing, and we'll touch on this in the next slide, but this AI tools and AI enhancements being brought into our Scrum practices. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and the presenter had said something along the lines of, AI will replace the Agile framework or the need for Scrum, within a couple of years. We don't need to learn about those. And I just could not disagree more. If anything, we are empowering our Scrum practices. We're not replacing the human side. And we'll touch on this in the Scrum Master slide, but there's ways for us to enhance not only our technical skill sets, but also the human aspects that we bring to the role. Um, and it's not, as doomsday as it sounds. Um, and also wanted to note here that we have the opportunity, and we're seeing this already, right? With Matt's comment around developers that are working side by side with AI are being prioritized. Organizations are being reduced. We're seeing headcount go down. We're looking at a future, I think, of leaner operations, but accelerated with more flow because we are able to augment or offload certain tasks over to AI. Not necessarily in the hopes of replacing, but in the hopes of accelerating.
Yeah, and I think there's a comment in the chat about the SM role could be doing more coaching. I think one of the
Absolutely.
things what we're seeing too, and it goes back to Joe's earlier comment about this evolution of the Scrum Master. In a lot of organizations who are cutting Scrum Mastery, it's because the person was essentially a team admin. Like I would be faster if I had a dedicated admin, like, but the cost benefit ratio is not there for the organization. Yes, it makes me faster, but does it make me faster enough to cover their compensation? No. And sadly, if you look at where a lot of organizations were with the Scrum Master side wasn't generating the 100 million that they were investing into the Scrum Master role. They couldn't capture tangible enough returns. I think AI can also help fuel that, but it also fuels this other shift. The Scrum Master is not a facilitator. They're not a mini union rep for the team, but they're really an effectiveness engineer. We're looking, how do I make that team more effective to deliver the organization's goals? By removing a lot of this overhead to that role, they can be much more connected to the strategic vision of the organization, what matters, and as even says here in the chat, be looking more about what the other teams are doing and working as a Scrum Master group to ensure effective coordination and collaboration and knowledge sharing, which can bring significant value. If I can diffuse effective ideas faster throughout the organization will be much more effective in the long run. So the more we focus on being that effectiveness engineer, the better kind of we will be for the organization and the easier it is to articulate the value.
Absolutely. I think we can go to this next slide where we'll really hammer this point home. Um, we've already covered a lot of it, but we'll highlight some of these before and after AI, and hopefully, if there are Scrum Masters here or Scrum of Scrums Masters, this can spark some creativity or experiments that we can bring into our tomorrow. So. Again, we're really emphasizing, and I'm seeing Jason Tanner, your comments in the chat about the key of a Scrum Master is how do we make the organization more effective? And I couldn't agree more. I do think it has quite a bit with AI, and I think we're going to see that especially in the coming months and years. So again, we're highlighting that AI is supporting the Scrum Master in two separate ways. We're automating the technical where we can and using that to generate insights quicker. And we're also amplifying the human. We're opening up more opportunity for the Scrum Master to focus on meaningful work. And as Matt said, not necessarily bog down on some of the non-purposeful or non-effective work. So before AI, and we definitely see this even in our Scrum Master courses. So we're manually tracking the team metrics. We've seen this on like notepads or even within Jira, kind of a bunch of napkin math going on. Just with a couple of AI tools, we're able to draw insights on velocity, flow, estimation, and engagement that are coupled with and colored by our custom context, with the key there being the custom context. We have the ability to couple that insight, those data reports, with information about the team, data from our sprint retrospectives, highest level OKRs or organizational goals, so that we're able to draw insights with our AI tools. Matt, do you want to talk about estimation a little bit?
Yeah, like one thing where I've seen teams rapidly accelerate, like how many teams get together and they love planning poker and like that's what they sit and live to do, or even t-shirt sizing. Like, no, it kind of sucks. It's a necessary evil. AI is very good at it. If you have to take this practical, like if you have every ticket that's ever gone through loaded and how it was scored, and you write a new ticket, it's pretty obvious to the AI what it is most similar to. Like this is the very definition of pattern matching and t-shirt sizing. Like it can do that referential scoring almost perfectly every single time. If you then actually understand how long things would take, and like a lot of agilists and truly believe humans can't estimate well in time, but if you
Mm.
actually knew how long everything had ended up taking every single ticket, AI can because it doesn't have the same bias of needing to do referential sizing or relative sizing. It can actually just do referential sizing. So like we're seeing this huge push in the estimation side because the data is like relatively clear to remove something that people don't like about Scrum and do it significantly better. And most teams have that data readily available, at least what they estimated it to be. And it takes that human judgment call out of it because I really like this. I really want to do it. So I'm going to make it sound easier to do. Like we all have that internal bias. Like the things we're excited about are always going to be easier than things that we're less excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to highlight Eben Chafee, your comment in the chat around the kind of the limits on the data that we're using as input into AI and the risk of too much specific data. Um, I think that estimating is a really good scenario for us to dive into. You know, Matt had mentioned the example earlier of AI assisted resume sorting, right? Naturally a bias came through around the gender of the applicants. So, you know, that's the reason that we really started with the introduction and kind of that theory around using Agile in your AI practice, because it's not a perfect system and it requires your constant feedback and your constant human intervention. So, you know, as a Scrum Master for our team, I would start with the absolute, you know, slimmest data set that I possibly could. I would make assumptions on my own human behavior about, you know, I'll take the last 3 weeks, I'll take, you know, the JIRA reports, I'll export those, I'll add in our sprint retrospectives and a couple of, you know, other things around our internal team process. And I would see what sort of output that was generated for me. And then I would refine from there because you could see biases come to the forefront of, you know, when Matt handles a specific PBI, he would estimate that as a, you know, an 8. And when I handle it, I would estimate it as a 800. So I think that that is where we can really, you know, use our agile practice as we're answering some of these questions, because there's not going to be a perfect answer that fits all contexts.
So,
There's
Alyssa, question
Yeah.
with estimation, and if you're going to cover this later in the talk, then please go ahead. But I've always been curious about this because typically when you estimate effort for a
Mhm.
story, for example, you're estimating based on volume of work, complexity, and risk. How does the AI know what the volume of work is if it doesn't have context into what your application is and how it's designed? So how can it possibly tell you how much work is involved, in that dimension of estimating effort?
So I think the easy answer is looking because you're not asking it without fueling it with data. So assuming you were good at this in the past, it's going to build off how you would estimate it in the future, and it's just extrapolating back based on the underlying data. So if you were doing that well, it will continue to do that well. If you're doing that poorly, it will probably do it slightly better than you were, which leads into some questions in the chat around bias. Like with estimation, we're all biased anyways. So what's the cost of that bias? And if it's wrong, and we should still sense check it. But this goes back when I'm rejecting resumes, flat out, no humans ever looked at it. I've given the AI trust that then it affects an individual. I've moved into agent territory, much more dangerous because it's making that call and taking a human out of the loop. With estimation, if there's bias, it's probably going to be slightly less bias. And it's just reflecting your own biases that were already there anyways, and you're still reviewing it. So if it comes out with something crazy, like what do you do when you're doing planning poker? You throw out the higher lows or have a conversation, like treat it like a team member and treat it like a very intelligent team member, but you may overrule it. Like no one's saying just go with the first answer. One of the like best advice I ever got with using generative AI in the beginning was never accept an answer until you've gone back and forth 10 times. Irrelevant if you like the first answer, to get used to interacting with it. This isn't new search. So
Yeah.
give it new information. Tell it what you like, what you dislike. So go back and forth. And just like as a human says, hey, we need to do this, the answer is why. Ask it why. Give it more data and go back and forth and have that conversation. And I challenge everyone here too when they use it, even if they feel like they got to the answer that they needed, go back and forth 9 more times and see if it makes it better and use it as a chat. It's called a chat for a reason. Don't treat it like a search. And then building on one of like, there's some privacy concerns. Well, follow your organizational's guidance. There's a lot of these tools that are now being built kind of within their own firewalls. And I wouldn't load anything that we would be uncomfortable loading into a protected like ChatGPT, you can easily tell it to not train any of its models based on your data. But PEI, do you need personally identified information to have it do its effect? If not, then delete it. it's not needed. It's not making the model any more intelligent or effective. And two, like ChatGPT doesn't want to be hacked like any other organization, has significant security protections within there. But there is always that risk. So like as an organization, I wouldn't load anything into a third party that you would be uncomfortable if that third party got hacked. A, they probably have better security than your organization. So you have that information, you should be treating it just as kindly internally. But if you would rather be the ones who hacked that leaked the data, then keep it internally or use on-prem tools or things that are protected very clearly kind of by your firewall and follow your organization's guidance. But the risk already exists the second the data exists. I don't think AI is fueling it, and I think you're seeing much more internal risk organizations realize that. AI is not actually increasing this risk at all. It's actually that we have the data needs to be protected. And if we're using third parties, we need to be comfortable that that third party is protecting the data.
Absolutely. I'm also seeing this conversation going on around internally we hear from Dr. Sutherland a lot, argue with the AI tools. And Joe, to bring in a practical, like real world example, as we've been introducing some of these concepts within our own, just public training, the slimmest slice that we possibly could, we see very similar questions around estimation, even with AI brought in, right? I'm sure that we've all, at one point, learned about estimation and had someone raise their hand and say, well, how do I estimate something with a system I'm not familiar with or estimate work that I've never done before, right? There's a lot of unknowns. And I really think that the key here and what I would coach Scrum Masters to really keep in mind is how quickly do we learn so that we can change behavior. I can estimate something right now and I could say that, it's a size medium. In the afternoon, maybe I have more insight and more data that tells me that this is actually a large. So I think that, bringing Matt's theory down to earth a bit, let's emphasize and focus on providing that custom context to our tools with the emphasis that it's not a big bang approach. We're teaching it and we're learning as we go, and how quickly can we learn and influence with what we've gained.
Before we get totally kind of bogged down, but I think there's a good mindset too as we get this. The same thing happens with adopting agile practices, lots of stuff. It's very unscientific. You get asked to prove a positive, which
Hmm.
anyone who has a science background, proving a positive is really difficult. It's much easier to prove it, identify a negative. So that's like where hypothesis testing is. So when it comes to AI, the question isn't, is it perfect? The question is, do we have reason to believe it's going to be worse than what's currently there? And it moves the threshold better. You see this with autonomous driving. Well, it got into a crash. Well, humans get in a crash constantly. Does it get into a crash more or less than humans? Now that's the real question. Is it made the situation incrementally better? Is it the perfect solution? No, but that's an irrelevant. Or can I prove it's better? Well, can I prove what we're currently doing has some issues? So don't we try something new? It changes the threshold around some of these questions quite drastically.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we move on to the product owner slide, I do want to just giggle a little bit. This is reminding me about like Agile or Scrum Twitter back in the day when fights around estimation would pop up continuously on the timeline. And so I appreciate that this is a topic that's brought up, but reinforcing that agile mindset and the agile ways of working of starting small and learning so that we can change our behavior.
Is there any other ones of these, Alyssa, you want to make sure we call out? We kind of went down an estimation rabbit hole.
We did. Yeah, I got really stuck on that first one. I do want to call out because this generated a lot of conversation in our last talk. So the coaching based on experience alone, that before state, what we're really seeing with AI is the ability for individual coaches to pair with and have conversation with AI tools, AI chatbots specifically, so that we get that unbiased quote unquote, framework specific coaching insights. And this is, something that we're seeing in the deployment of our or our consulting services. We have teams on the ground that go in and they, coach teams. They, provide them with feedback. We attend all of their events. And then there's a certain point when they don't need that hands-on coaching or consulting anymore. So looking at our AI tools, what's another tool in our toolkit that we can provide to teams as a resource for them to continuously refer back to some of our foundational knowledge and principles, and also just, I don't know, uh, problem and solution, have a conversation with, given specific context, come to communication solutions. So I think that this is really where we can get creative and we can look at what tools are available. I know that we have, a custom GPT within our Scrum Lab platform. I know Dr. Sutherland talks about Scrum Sage, his custom GPT that's available in the public workspace. You can go in and that's a custom built agent that you can have a conversation with. I like to joke that Scrum Sage is like having a conversation with Jeff. You can say, okay, I don't feel like going to my daily today. What are the implications? And you will get a very Jeff generated response. So I would really try to, coach our Scrum Masters to look at those as opportunities to enhance our own practices, learn more, while also, looking at it as a pairing buddy.
Yeah, I was just working with an organization on the pairing buddy. Like, how many people have gotten some sort of written review as part of a yearly, quarterly, or half-year cycle that sucked? Like, it wasn't actionable, it wasn't very good. And humans just like surprised not everyone's raised their hand. I know some of you now are just lying or don't feel like raising your hand. Um, Most of those are terrible because it's not like our main job. Like like
Mhm.
how many people went to like review writing classes and took a semester on it, like how to make sure it's actionable. Also, humans are really bad at just like giving feedback because like we're naturally social acceptance creatures, yada yada yada. The organization mandated and came out with a custom tool that every review had to be floated through, and then it would ask a series of prompting questions to kind of just move that needle better. And would give you feedback like this isn't actionable. What are you really saying here? It seems like you got to the surface level. So it's a great way as a Scrum Master if you need to give someone feedback. And this morning I did this. I had to have a difficult conversation with someone, and I wanted to, based on kind of modern research, like how do I have this conversation? Let's iterate back and forth on a framework about how to have this really difficult conversation. And it's almost just a reminder of the things that I already know. I've been told these things, but it prompted me to be like, yes, I need to make sure I acknowledge I'm having this conversation because I care. It gave me a few just like reminders. It's like why surgeons read a checklist every time before they do surgery, just to remind them of the things they already know, because if you don't actively bring them to the frontal lobe, you may forget about them. So I think there's a huge value in actually having that conversation to reinforce some of those behaviors that we don't do all the time and or difficult.
And I just want to, as I'm looking at chat, Jason's got a lot of good comments and questions. It seems to me it goes back to Alyssa, what you said earlier, which was use GPT as a companion. So, in other words, he asks, do you use it for a daily scrum? Do you use it to come up to help the team come up with a better plan to crush our sprint goal or have a better planning session? I think the answer is yes, you can, right? It's sort of like a tool that you can use for that. Can you talk about that a bit?
Oh, I'm just excited on the sprinkle one. I work with a
Yeah.
lot of, I know this, I'll throw it back to you after, but work with a lot of teams that are doing a lot of different things. They're not doing product development, totally outside of IT. And this sprinkle is always an issue. I've got 6 team members, kind of 4 main pieces of effort. We're a hybrid collection of individuals or sub teams that aren't small enough to be scrum teams. Like, and we can argue about those structures all day, but irrelevant. So the teams always struggle on choosing a sprinkle. Loading all the things in there and asking what the sprinkle should be actually removes kind of some of the bias. And I found it a really effective way to like sum up how do I bring all this together into a narrative. So I absolutely love it on the sprinkle topic, and it's a thing that I'm seeing more and more people doing, especially on these teams that like aren't working on a single product, not in product development. And this is always like, we can't really do a sprint goal because we really would need four. Um, it's actually created this like good theme that actually increased that team connectivity quite significantly. And you actually really saw like the reason we have a sprint goal, let's think about the outcome it's trying to give us is that sprint, that connectivity as a team and ensuring we do the biggest thing. Those really kind of disfocused teams like could never have that. And the way sometimes it weaves this stuff together into a narrative was like something it would have taken a human with a ninja mind to be able to come up with.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to also note, this helps with the connection between the team and the larger scaled structure as well. I'm kind of surprised that Matt didn't touch on that and only focused on the team. But this is a suggestion that we made last week, right? I have my team data. I have the sprint that has been set off by my product owner. If I'm checking in with the team every single day and I'm asking the team and also ChatGPT and I'm saying, what should our team plan for today in order to meet that sprint goal? We have the AI insights that's able to very quickly generate some sort of topic or talking point or something that we can discuss so that we can make that plan really quickly. And then as we move into team planning or team of teams planning, right, we have the ability to take those insights and match them or analyze them based off of our larger organization or business unit goals. And I think that that is really where the power can come in. And we have another slide a little bit further down around these agents that can represent some of the voices within your
Mm.
product or in your organization. But I would really suggest start small and then get creative, feel inspired on how we can take this not only from like the team level, but also to our highest level priorities and North Stars.
taking this back down to the burn down, do you want to make sure we touch on the product owner so we can get to some of the agent stuff that Alyssa has built a little bit further on? But a couple of just use cases where we see really powerful on the product owner side. Prioritizing backlog. So you can tell what is my organization value. It could actually load in my organization OKRs and it could actually give you a sense check on your prioritization. Another one is like doing user groups really difficult and costly. What we're seeing is more organizations creating synthetic customers by loading all that awesome data they have from every user group they've had in, all the comments from their websites and stuff like that, and creating like a lot of Agilists have been a big fan of personas for a long time, but using those personas and taking them to the next new level. And then you can have a customer sitting next to every engineer at their desk. What would you like? Would you like the button to be here or there? And actually being able to get this live customer feedback in a way that we couldn't. So like AI can step in and really drive customer centricity to a completely new level. And then we need to really think about how to capture that customer feedback in a way to continuously evolve that customer as things change. So there's tons of organizations doing synthetic customers, and all the feedback I've heard is absolutely powerful. Like, yes, I would prefer a real customer standing at my desk all the time, but that would be completely impossible. And really, like on the engineering side, digital twins, like if I'm building hardware, like what would this do in the real world? It's the same thing. It's like a digital twin, but of your customer. It's pretty kind of impressive. The writing user stories, like we know the better the user story or whatever format we're using, the better connectivity. Also, again, going to Alyssa's point and got kicked about like not thinking about the organization's goals, but like if my user story actually understands the organization's mission, vision, strategy, and I ask it to augment and kind of help me write the user story, it can start to bring in some of those components and ensure alignment to not my team's goals, but the organization around and then the ultimate organization as well, or the enterprise. Um, and then it can help kind of make trade-offs. Should I do this or that? And just be that partner. So as a product owner, one of the biggest issues is a lot of them just don't have the time or feel like that they don't have the time because they're slaves to the tactical to do some of the strategic back and forth. If we can accelerate this and get a better things that have really clear acceptance criteria, the better off we're going to be as an organization. So we can really pull that through. So we're seeing massive uptake to really do one of the pieces that I think have been really lagging behind, but like push lots of different people who may have the insight, but not the practice to be really effective product owners. This moves the floor up for them because they've got that coach. They can take some of that manual work off and make it better slowly by having a product owner coach who understands them, understands their team, and understands what the organization is trying to do to drive that golden thread from vision to mission to strategy to what am I doing today. So what we're seeing is we're thinking about how to introduce AI practices. This is classic, like digital transformations or even agile transformations. Like, we all shall now do this thing. What we got to worry about is like, just like agile shouldn't be the point, your organizational outcomes. Agile is a tool to be able to support that. AI is also a tool to support outcomes. And a lot of organizations we're talking to at the moment, like AI seems to be the point. Like, we need to do AI. Why? Because we need to do AI or we're going to get left behind. Like, that's not a super interesting rallying statement. When I ran the lab, like people would come to the lab and be like, all right, I need an AI tool to do this. All right, how do you think through this? And they would essentially write out the decision framework. I'm like, well, then we could just program that. Why would we use AI? I don't need to use machine learning to identify the rule set. Like, you know what the rule set is. Like, because we have to use AI. That's not compelling. This seems like the wrong tool for the wrong situation. So I think helping every organization to really articulate their why, and then each step we should keep challenging ourselves. Why is this going to make this better? And the more I know that it gives me actually a testing framework. It's not about slowing down as much as it's like, all right, I can now turn this into a hypothesis that I can test. Um, when it's also that mandate, it's not bringing people in. You got to need to tell people what's in it for them. And then you've got lots of hype. So like as we then turn this into the positive, we need to start small, learn fast, scale quick. So like let's use that agile practices, use real team feedback to kind of adjust what's not working. We got to be really clear on bias or where agents are making bad decisions. We need to be able to spot that. We're not going to know ahead of time until we do something. One of the worst things I think Silicon Valley did was this fail fast ethos, which I think is woefully misunderstood. They didn't mean fail fast for the sake of failing. They meant learn fast.
Yeah.
If I fail a whole lot and really fast and then don't learn anything, I've accomplished nothing. I want to make lots of small failures so I don't make a massive failure. So we've got to really take that into AI. I would rather have a lots of failures, identify biases, identify answers that just aren't better than kind of the human decision earlier. So then I'm not finding out I made a massive mistake in the Wall Street Journal. Like, that failure is unacceptable. Lots of little failures, a sprint that failed because like we went down this path and went the wrong direction. I can live with that. What I don't want to do is read about it in the journal. So like, how do we make lots of little failures so we don't make those meta failures? And then let the best ideas kind of evolve. So let teams drive the adoptions, not just mandates, and create systems, architecture to ensure those ideas can compete and the best ones survive and kind of roll out through that organization. And then fit AI into workflows. Like, one of the reasons I think agile transformations fail is like we just said all these ceremonies exist, that this is how prioritization happens. None of it's on paper. The company has a governance process that looks very different than Agile, and we didn't blend those two. Agile survives if I actually change the operating model and the structures to support. Like, this is just how we prioritize. If you look at the corporate governance, it's supporting Agile or it is Agile. Everything falls in line. No leader can come in and change it because they'd have to go change all the governance. It's actually happening because of the system, not despite the system. The same thing needs to happen in AI. If it's like, well, here's my workflow, let me stop and go over here and do the AI thing and then come back. Like, now I've got to go out of my way to do it. The more I can build it into the workflow, like simple hack is if I want an AI to listen to all the team meetings, so then it's smart enough to be able to help and give ideas about how the team should operate for retro, automatically invite it to every single meeting so it's part of the workflow. so then you don't need to remember to do it. So really drive this stuff into the workflows where the system is actually enhancing it. It's not a thing happening on the side.
Absolutely. The only addition I want to make here, Matt, is bringing us back to what you had started with, setting the conditions of your experiment and experimenting within to test a hypothesis, right? Seeing another comment from Jason around using our AI tools, and this is incredibly accessible. You could create a ChatGPT account today, right now, and within the next 5 minutes, have a competitive analysis for your current product, looking at pricing comparisons. But emphasis on the testing grounds and the hypothesis, and also keeping in mind that these tools are not magic, I can't say that word. Uh,
Hallucinations.
Hallucinations exist for a reason, and that is where we're really seeing the impact of the human strategy and the process come in. Whether you're implementing these AI tools within your Scrum process, within your development process, in your organization, and that's really, I think, the main point around keeping this presentation and looking at the future not being so dark and gloomy and scary is that there's the opportunity for you to be a part of that three-pronged process. And, a really pertinent example, we have the ability to look at our competitive analysis and to use that as a tool, use our AI tools within that process. But that doesn't exactly mean that you want to be standing behind a product owner that is only utilizing one single source for that competitive analysis, right? That can lead you down a path where you're developing a product, or you're, introducing certain insights or changes to your Scrum practice that are based off of a false data set or an error within the AI tool. So really highlighting there the AI, the human, and the process is really what's going to be that ideal recipe there.
Yeah, we need effective governance. Like people are always worried about AI hallucinations. Like I've talked to a lot of employees who are also hallucinating daily about what their job is and how it drives value. So like again, we've got to look at that threshold. And there's a ton of bias or like, well, where did the AI get this data? Where did you get your data to support? Oh, it's just your opinion. Um, we almost can treat them the same as like, all right, their opinions, their ideas. Let's have good governance to make sure that we check, just like an employee may have created a rule that's never really existed. AI may be citing a rule that or research that didn't exist. Like the same problem exists with humans as well. The problem is we made it actually work like humans. As then we think about kind of the strategic, like get after the stuff that is the highest value and the lowest complexity. Like everybody's seen these charts. Like let's get after let's have a right balance of the high value, low complexity, easy wins, and a couple strategic initiatives on 1,000 on like the home run swings. I want to make sure I have a right balance on the top two. 80% going to this high value, low value, and then 20% going to one or two home run swings. And if I've got a development funnel, those home run swings, I can get five or six of them attempted a year if I can kill them really quickly when it doesn't look like they're going to work. Like I still want some persistence, but let me each time have a sprint review. Do I have hope still that I could be able to do this? So I think people in these prioritization metrics are like, oh, I'm going to get all the low hanging fruit. Like, great. Don't only do that. Go like right now, like the world is step for transformative phase changes. Put a limited amount of bets and focus around a couple phase changes because if I treat them like all the low hanging fruit and go after 50 of them at once, I'll get none of them done. You want to talk about some of your agents?
Oh, Joe is trying to speak to
Yeah, I'm
us.
sorry. We're just about at time, which is a bummer because I think you have a lot more content here. So again, we'll probably have to invite you back for part two of this, but at some point when you're free. But um, is there one thing you want to leave us with here before we wrap up for today?
We could go to that very last slide, Matt. So we were going to go over AI agents, a really accessible way to create those and start working alongside them. And then we were also going to touch on the research aspect and allowing these tools to influence, although I think we've touched on quite a bit of that. So I just wanted to note here at the very end, potentially we'll come back for another session if Joe allows it. But highlighting that, we're in the process of adding in, AI training and insights within our consulting services, also adding in some of the content that you see here within our Agile specific, role specific training on the Agile education side. We're trying a new experiment as we've seen a demand on both sides for us to introduce content around AI being a AI practitioner without that Scrum or Agile lens. So this is an opportunity. This is a new class. I will actually be co-training this class with a member of the Agile education community, Paolo from Italy. We might have Matt drop in. We might have Dr. Sutherland drop in, but this is going to be a really excellent opportunity to get more into the technical side. Those last two experiment slides were really around practical application. We will bring that into this class as well, while also talking about some of the fundamentals of Gen AI.
Fantastic. And absolutely, we're going to invite you back because it looks like we have a lot more content to cover. An hour is just not enough. But Alyssa and Matt, thank you very, very much for a great presentation today. And thank you for being part of the Agile Boston community and all the support that you and Scrum Inc. gives to the Agile Boston community. This event will be posted up on our Agile Boston YouTube channel within a week. Give me a little bit of time to put it all together, put some marketing around it, or branding around it, I should say. And it will be posted up on our YouTube channel in the next week or so. And definitely take advantage of this course on May 2nd. That would be really great. So with that, Matt and Alyssa, thank you again. And for everyone, we can't wait to see you next time.
So to leave a final thought, if we're scared about AI, if you're scared, what you need to do is do and take action. So just lean in. If you're excited by it, then you should be excited and do. All roads point to do.
Absolutely. It's like watching a horror movie. If you can take your head out of the pillow for one scene, you're good for the rest of it.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say, Joe.
All right. All right, everyone. Take care.
Bye.